From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined as always with our super producer, Alexis, codename Doc Holliday Jackson. Most importantly, you are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. We're hurtling headlong toward the end of August, and we have such wonders to show you. We're going to talk about Disney. We're going to talk about Mars. We're going to hit up Banksy. Before we do any of that, Matt, Noel, codename Doc Holliday is a little bit salty. A little bit salty with me.
What about where you find yourself in the world?
Yeah.
I'm having a little FOMO myself. I'm not going to lie. I don't want to blow up your spot, but let's just say Mr. Miyagi would be proud.
Ooh, nice. What did you call it, Doc? Not a cold open, but a heartless open? All right.
No, Ben, we wish you the best in your travels abroad. We really do. We're not mad at all.
Here we go.
Speak for yourself, because I am mad.
Okay, fair enough.
Oh, no.
I just think it's cool.
It is cool. It's super cool.
Not like literal mad, but you know.
We all go a little mad sometimes, codename Doc Holliday.
And speaking of going, okay, this is one that just as a mention that a lot of our fellow conspiracy realists have sent us. We all saw the thing about New Zealand having to hunt down all that candy with methamphetamine in it. Did you guys hear about that?
Codename Candy, right? Is that a street name?
Yeah.
It wasn't it a part of some charity or some kind of super positive thing? And then there's meth.
Yes. Yeah. In the candy, which is like the Halloween myth.
There was a similar story too about like a guitar center. If anyone like knows Guitar Center for, amps and music gear and stuff, a bunch of amplifiers were found to be stuffed with bricks of cocaine. So I thought that was a sort of an analogous kind of story.
Yeah. Speaking of analogous, in our show's home state of Georgia, as I'm sure we all saw.
That's right.
Right.
Ding, ding.
Doc is on the road and this whole place falls apart without you, codename Holiday, because over 2,300 pounds of methamphetamine were found hidden in a celery shipment to the Georgia farmers market out in Forest Park.
The vegetable no one ever pays attention to.
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
You said Forest? You said Forest Park?
Yeah, on the way to my old stompy grounds. Yeah.
So celery, candy.
Yeah.
Anything else we can?
Guitar amps
for
the good cocaine,
all stuffed with drugs.
I hope they were PVs.
I want to give a shout out to before we move on, just because we'll get into this story. But conspiracy realists, we want you to know that we also clocked this. The DEA. One of the funniest parts about the article on the Georgia meth bust was a DEA agent adding emphatically, "Don't worry, we're not going to let people sell the celery." So if that was a question.
I mean, next thing on the list will be boar's head meats stuffed with drugs.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Killed two birds with one stone.
Yeah. Are you tired of the same old listeria? Boar's head meat. now just a little jittery.
Riddled with LSD.
Riddled with, speaking of things being riddled with, we're talking about this a little bit off air. The mouse is back in the news for a very strange situation that kind of smacks a conspiracy. We talk a lot about terms and conditions, or terms of use, the fine print that the big companies would rather you not read. Disney has recently, as of just a few days ago, asked a Florida court to dismiss a wrongful death lawsuit filed earlier this year. A lady passed away due to an anaphylactic reaction after she ate a meal at Disney Springs. And Disney has asked the court to dismiss this. It was filed by the victim's husband because the victim was, I kid you not, a Disney Plus subscriber.
So, I mean, Disney Springs is sort of like a food court situation. I mean, it's not all like Disney branded stuff. There's like a Lego store and like other little restaurants. So I'm wondering, obviously Disney owns the development or the facility, but like, are they always going to be on the hook, like as a company, if a third party company that they lease space to has a situation like this?
That's a good question. It looks like she was eating at the Raglan Road Irish pub, and the victim, who unfortunately again is deceased, is Kanakpon Tongswan, and she's a doctor up in NYU in New York City. She had a severe dairy and nut allergy. Told the waitstaff of the pub about this well in advance, and was, according to the lawsuit, unequivocally assured that they could be accommodated. She ordered the vegetarian broccoli and corn fritters, a sea scallops appetizer, a vegan entree, like a shepherd's pie, vegan shepherd's pie, and then onion rings. And
Ben,
then,
can you please say the names of those dishes?
all right. The vegetarian broccoli is Sure I'm Frittered. The sea scallops appetizer is Scallop Forest, and the shepherd's pie is This Shepherd Went Vegan. We're getting this. We're getting this thanks to the worldwide leader in Disney park news, WDW News Today.
I think I was looking for a Disney pun in those names, but I don't think that's what there is.
We haven't identified the onion rings as terms of their sides name.
Yeah. I just think it's funny that they have such cute names, right, for meals that in a cute place, Disney Springs, that's
the cutest place on earth is their tagline, if I'm not mistaken.
The cutest vegan pie on earth. Yeah.
And it's the happiest place on earth. Everything's great so far in this trip. What happened then? Yeah.
So unfortunately, again, this is tragic. Parts of this are gallows humor, but we do have to remember a person passed away. At first, the victim and her mother-in-law went shopping. Like you just described, Noel, Disney Springs is one of those live, laugh, love places, right? Mixed use. Go buy some stuff. We'll give the food cute names to justify the price. It wasn't until later that evening that Tong Swan had this acute allergic reaction in Planet Hollywood. She administered an EpiPen to herself. She was taken to a hospital, and that's where she passed away. On May 31st, Disney filed a motion to move the wrongful death lawsuit out of the courts and into arbitration. And Disney's lawyers said the following. This is a quote from our source. The journalist is Britt Tuttle. Disney said, quote, "There's legal language within the terms and conditions for Disney Plus, which requires users to arbitrate all disputes within the company." And they claim that the husband of the victim agreed to this blanket arbitration back in 2019 when he signed up for a 1-month free trial of the streaming service on his PlayStation console. Doc, beat me here. Are you kidding? That's like, imagine you sign up for Netflix or any other streaming service, right? And then Netflix has their version of whatever the Disney Springs of Netflix would be, like the Netflix North Pole.
Well, Netflix does have like a brick and mortar movie theater type situation somewhere. I believe that's relatively new. I'm sorry. Let me try to understand. Are you saying that there's some sort of like clause in signing up that like prevents the person from suing, or that, like, because of the language in them, basically being tricked into signing up for this, free trial, that it gives them less of a case? I want to make sure I'm not misunderstanding.
Right. I had the same thing.
Jesus Christ.
That's what Disney's lawyers are arguing, and that's why it
insane.
feels conspiratorial, because look, we're not jurists, but the jurisprudence here could be quite dangerous if it sets a precedent, because I think I assume what most of us imagine when we sign up for a service like that and we see the arbitration thing, you see it whenever you download video games nowadays too. What they're saying is if you have a user data issue, right? Like if that personal info gets compromised, then you're saying you don't have a lawsuit.
What if that DLC gives you fatal food poisoning? What then? I mean, I'm joking, but it's like, good Lord, that's a big blanket, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, let's first talk about what arbitration means, because I remember when I didn't know what that meant not that long ago. It just means that instead of going to a court of law within the United States and, you know, going through all the legal rigmarole that you would do if you were attempting to sue a company such as Disney, you would instead go into a separate room, not a courtroom, with a person who's an arbitrator, not a judge, who would basically listen to the arguments of both sides and come to an agreement together with an arbitrator.
Right. The only difference between that and having, you know, a sit down hangout with a mediating buddy is that in arbitration, the decision is legally binding and can be enforced by an actual facts court. Shout out to our friend Lauren Vogelbaum.
Isn't that a situation where you can opt for arbitration, like in cases of divorce, for example, but you have to accept the outcome? Like it's an option. If you don't want to go to full on court, you can say, let's do arbitration. But then there is, you know, a caveat that you have to accept the ruling of the arbitrator, despite the fact they're not a judge.
Right. Which makes me think we might be able to do a fun episode in the future on all those TV court shows. Conspiracy realists, let us know if that's something you're interested in, because a lot of those folks, technically what they're doing is arbitration, not an actual court case. Here's why this is terrifying conspiratorial. And let's go to, I haven't said the husband's name yet. Jeffrey Piccolo is the husband of the deceased. And his attorneys, his legal team, is saying Disney's latest legal move here is preposterous because if everybody signs off on this, if a court agrees this should be arbitration, then that would mean the 153 million subscribers to Disney Plus have waived all claims against the company and all of its affiliates because of language buried in the terms and conditions. Disney's lawyers say whether or not Piccolo reviewed the terms of the agreement is immaterial, which seems just, gosh, we thought our cold open was cold.
Yeah, but I guess that is kind of the thinking behind all of those, you know, terms of service agreements that companies put out, right? It was the joke, right? Nobody's going to read the actual Facebook terms of service, the actual insert company here document. You're just going to scroll down so you can use the thing you want to use, which is very common. But my goodness, just having a company that has so many different arms, right, that operate, and a lot of them have physical interaction with you, not just virtual over a computer. You're going to be hanging out actually with Disney, and if something happens, too bad.
Exactly. And there's the other question here, and I love that you're pointing out the tendrils. It's quite possible then that you could have agreed to this in some form by clicking some term of condition. You know, most people are scrolling down and just going, where's the agree button? I got to watch, you know, Moana or whatever. And then they get to, that's one, right? Moana?
That's one of my favorites.
It's a good one.
Yeah, I thought it was one of the good ones. So then what they're saying is the implication is that you might have something bad and or fatal happen, and you might not know it's a Disney subsidiary. You might not know it's a Disney service. Disney just owns it the way Unilever owns things. And we'll talk about monopolization later. And that, fellow conspiracy realists, puts you up a heck of a creek. There's a lot of weird legal stuff going on, man.
Disney owns so much, though. I mean, come on. They're essentially the Globochem of today. You know, I mean, they're like this massive umbrella company that like owns things you would never even realize. Like how can they expect that a normal person would know? And not to mention, I can't get over the fact that this was due to a free trial that was like, they throw those things at you. I RSVP'd to an Evite today, and it tried to get me to sign up for Disney Plus. Like, you know, dangling the free trial. And like, how many of those actually amount to somebody actually clicking yes? But all of a sudden, you're on the hook for this stuff. It's wild.
And before we move on, we love a lot of stuff about Disney. You know, we too were once youths in America, but we would love to hear your strange stories about the mouse and what essentially functions as an independent nation state inside Florida. Speaking of weird legal stuff, this is something on everybody's mind. We almost opened with this. The Economist, not the magazine I still read for some reason, but the Economist at the Federal Reserve had finally admitted something America's been saying for a while. Hey, this is not really inflation. It's fake inflation. This is price gouging, and companies are beginning to get worried, including Disney. Companies are beginning to get worried that consumers are not going to keep playing ball. We want to thank Christopher Rugaber over at AP News with an article that came out. Americans' refusal to keep paying higher prices may be dealing a final blow to the U.S. inflation spike. Have you guys been noticing inflation kind of sticking around? I feel like maybe we're old codgers when we talk about it, but I saw a 20-ounce soda pop sold for soda pop. Geez, let me go to the Nickelodeon. I saw a 20-ounce soda sold for like $2.59 at a local gas station in Atlanta.
How much could a soda pop cost, Michael?
Right.
Come on. I know we always make that joke, but you also sent around on the group text, Ben, I think it was you, how like it's a massive grocery store chain, Kroger, is flipping to that dynamic. Ooh. I mean, it is, for all intents and purposes, those digital readouts, and some insider, I don't believe it was someone with the company, was like, yeah, on a hot day, that soda pop could go up a couple of cents, depending on conditions. And, you know, all the companies claim that that's not what it's for, but it's not what it's not for. I mean, it's certainly a thing that it could be for.
I mean, come on, right? Come on. Doc and I briefly were talking about this because it recently went viral on Instagram. It's very much true. And hey, they called us crazy, you guys, and they still call us crazy, and they may be right, but we were right about that part. Check out our surge pricing videos. There's so much conspiratorial about the framing of this inflation. Like, we mapped it out before. Supply chains broke down during the pandemic, but well before the pandemic, companies were already trying to squeeze every last drop of blood from the individual financial stone. And so they always knew, I would posit, that this was a short-term play. The idea on the shareholder and investor side was to post-pandemic, we're still in a pandemic, but post-supply chain breakdown, was to ride that wave of inflation and pretend like everything was still broken for as long as possible. So just like in surfing, you know you can't ride the wave forever. You just want to stay at the crest, right? Or I don't know enough about surfing to use those terms, but you want to, stay on top of the board as long as possible.
Do you think it's like an example of kind of clawing back some of those gains? You know, like I don't know, I guess people were spending money during the pandemic. I don't know. You got to remind me now. Like, I mean, there were certain industries that thrived and certain industries that didn't. Like Amazon, obviously, had a mega good time during pandemic. But it's an excuse, I guess, right? At the very least, that we have to get back some of those losses.
Yeah, it's an excuse on the company's part, you're saying, that they would recoup losses. Yeah. And we were talking off air about this surge pricing as a response to that, right? People are fighting inflation. So now maybe we can, as a company, target inflation toward you. Facial recognition is, again, it sounded crazy when we first mentioned it on air, but it will be deployed. The next step also is going to be recovering public info, probably based on zip code, right? Or whatever demographic info you can get. How much is the average person in insert zip code here willing to pay for a banana? Because if it's $10 per, then we're off to the races. This is happening. This is stuff they don't want you to know. There's so much more we have to get to before we pause. I guess we should say several major banks are in trouble. More on that soon as that develops. We also have to shout out DNA evidence because we talked briefly in the past. Matt, I believe you brought up the recent purchase of Ancestry.com. So just so everybody knows, forensic DNA is still helping us unravel conspiracies. An individual named Stephen Paul Gale would have gotten away with multiple sexual assaults dating back decades. He was just apprehended with DNA evidence. So there is hope. There is hope for some of the victims, and also statute of limitation laws, particularly in places like Massachusetts, are evolving in pace with technology. So we wanted to end on some rough but overall positive news. With this, we're going to pause for a word from our sponsors, and then we'll be back. Speaking of monopolies.
And we've returned, and we're going to stay on that inflation tip. Oh, I know you're excited. Oh, you're so excited.
I'm so inflated right now, dog.
Before the break, you kind of deflated a little bit. And then sort of,
I'm doing tantric podcasting. Yeah.
I love it.
You guys, I saw a clip from American Psycho. It's this moment in the club where a woman in the club asks, is it Bateman?
Yeah, Patrick.
Yeah, Patrick Bateman. Like, so what do you do? And he's like, I'm into, murders and executions mostly. But she hears him talking about mergers and acquisitions.
Right.
And
of course.
Oh, did you read, real quick, did you guys read the discourse about American Psycho is awesome. I got super deep into it when I was traveling for unrelated things. Apparently the idea is that Bateman never actually kills most of those people. And they're just his there is dark twisted fantasy. Have you guys read that?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
in that scene, my reading of the film is that he didn't actually say murders and executions. He said mergers and acquisitions, but in his head, that's what he's thinking.
He's like
That's
a dark Walter Mitty. Okay.
You know, that does kind of make the metaphor of it all a little stronger in a way. The idea that this is all in his, and the fact that he doesn't get caught and he sort of like completely melts down in such a public way and yet still doesn't get caught. Or you could read it that he really was doing it and he's at this echelon of society that he will never get caught no matter what horrible stuff he does. Anyway,
Yes.
I've derailed this.
No, it's fine. But essentially, what he is doing in his position at his job is making all become one. All shall become one. All will become one. And
one
nothing
ring to rule them all.
Yeah, and there's a lot of power in that, and nobody can do anything about it because now all are one. Okay, so I'm looking at a story today, guys, titled Mars to buy Pringles maker Kellenova for $36 billion in 2024's biggest deal. It's from Reuters, August 14th of this year.
Ooh, and yeah, you're right, folks. Pringles has a parent company.
Yes. So we're going to go deep into this, y'all. But first, I'm going to read one sentence just to really send it home of what we're talking about here. Quote, family-owned candy giant Mars is buying Cheez-It maker Kellenova. It opens a new tab in a nearly $36 billion deal, bringing together brands from M&M's and Snickers to Pringles and Pop-Tarts in the year's biggest deal to date. So, before we jump in, let's talk about these companies before they become one.
Can I just say that it's hilarious that they just throw in family owned, like Mars is some mom and pop like corner shop or something. It's good PR, I guess, but it's super weird.
But it's a
Walmart's
family
owned.
No, I know, but it doesn't mean what you think it means.
Sure.
Anyway,
it means corporate monarchs.
So you said jump in. What are these companies? Mars is much bigger than people imagine, and we'll get to that. Kellenova may not be familiar with everybody who's not into the creepy, weird stuff we're into, but from my understanding, Matt, Kellenova once upon a time was good old Kellogg's.
Kellogg's became a part of Kellenova because they became one, and now they are becoming one again. So before we get to Kellenova, we're doing Mars, though. Okay. So a lot of people know what a Mars bar is. You may not. It is a candy bar, a Mars bar. It's a pretty simple one. It's one that's been around for a long, long time. They also own M&Ms. They were once called M&M Mars. I don't know if it's not that anymore. I know it's Whatever. And Mars and M&Ms, those are the big ones. They own all the kinds, even the peanut butter ones. They own
Even the peanut butter.
Yes.
I like how. So Matt got more emphatic when he was pointing. He was like,
Sorry.
He was like, this, even the peanut butter ones.
Is that the one with the lady M&M? Which one's the sexy lady M&M?
Sorry, I know I'm the only one cursing. It's a weird time.
No. Who was it? It was some Fox News guy that sort of like really fetishized the lady M&M with her her boots.
Oh, yeah, it's Sean Hannity.
Yeah.
Sean Hannity.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
There we go.
He likes the gams.
He does like the gams.
Well, you want to get some good gams? Why not also enjoy Mars' offerings of Three Musketeers, Milky Way, Snickers, Twix, Dove chocolate products, all of them. Unilever owns the soap, by the way, the Dove soap. Mars also
no
owns,
connection, zero brand connection between Dove chocolate and Dove soap. Always wondered that. So,
I don't think so,
Okay,
unless somebody else has more information on it. My understanding is that Mars has the chocolate, Unilever has the soap. They also own 3 to 4 other fancy chocolate brands, such as Hotel Chocolat, which has no E at the end. That's how you know it's fancy.
Right.
I also didn't realize that they owned the 3 most popular fruit-flavored candies in the United States: Lifesavers, Starburst, and Skittles.
Wow. Skittles is just like fruit flavored M&Ms, basically. I mean,
Taste the rainbow of oligarchy. Yeah. Corporate oligarchy.
Remember when they had that spate of bizarre Skittles commercials that were borderline like sexual? I'm sorry, carry on.
ASMR
marketing is weird.
Well, I'm going to look that up right after this, but I don't know what we're talking about.
That's what it is. But it's not just candy, right?
Well, basically, from all of that list there, Halloween is like a big charity event so that we can all donate to Mars, which is weird. But I had no idea that they have a monopoly on chewing gum. I'm serious. They own Double Mint Gum, Winter Fresh, Juicy Fruit, Big Red, Hubba Bubba, Extra, Orbit, Eclipse, and 5 Gum. You remember that one? 5?
Yeah.
It was so exciting back in the
Got
day.
the number 5 as like an F, right?
It's kind of inspiring, though, Matt, that you include Big Red there, because that shows us that even big companies end up taking a massive loss once in a while, because Big Red is just like Big Red, war crime for your mouth.
Wow. I used to really like it. It's a cinnamon one, right? I used to like
That's
that
what
one.
they say.
Did you ever like lick the wrapper and stick it on your forehead to try to feel something? It'll burn you. Yeah, it's a thing kids used to do. Maybe I was the only one. It's a thing.
Didn't
No,
know
it's
that.
definitely a thing. Because what are you going to do? Eat the gum?
Oh, I did. You know what they also own, guys? The thing we used to always carry around in our cargo pants, the curiously strong mints. You remember those in the red tins?
Altoids.
Yeah.
Which always kind of had the patina of European specialty mints. It's sort of like craft breweries that are owned by giant beer companies. Like they have all these little brands. You're like, oh yeah, like Altoids is totally made in the Swiss Alps from unfiltered spring water or something, right?
I mean, maybe it is, but Mars owns whatever the factory is.
Shout out to the Tenovation episodes we had to do years back.
Hey, I remember those. Oh, but when we're talking about the gum here, the reason why they own all those is because they became one with Wrigley's not too long ago.
I was going to say, it's almost like Erasure, where I was like, weren't those all Wrigley's? What happened to Wrigley's? Yeah.
Well, that's the natural trend, right?
They also owned Kind bars and Combos, the craveable pretzel rolls filled with pizza somehow. Nature's Bakery fig bars, which again seem kind of healthy. I used to eat them with my son all the time. Nope.
I'm paying extra. It must be healthy.
And this really solves a mystery for me, because Kind bars always had M&M versions and Snickers versions, and it's basically just this masquerading as healthy candy bar, you know?
Yeah, dude. And that's just one of their segments, by the way, and that's not including all the other international products that they offer, because they offer different products in different countries and different regions. They've also got a food and nutrition segment that owns your brand of rice, Ben, by the way. Used to be Uncle Ben's, now it's just Ben's Rice. So congratulations.
Yeah, we should not be defined by our connections. You know what I mean? Social or familial. Also, I believe big in the world of pet food, right? Is that correct?
Huge in pet food. Think of a pet food brand, they probably own it, including the stuff you see at the vet's office that's like prescription pet food.
Yeah.
They own the brand and they own most of the vets. VCA vets, Banfield vets that are popping up everywhere. We're talking thousands of veterinary clinics.
Very specific stuff that sounds like it was made by a pharmaceutical outfit. Like, do you have an elderly epileptic parrot? This is the only food you can feed it. Guess what? Mars makes it.
Isn't this what they call vertical integration? Like that kind of stuff where like you own the pet food and you own the vet clinics that like shill the pet food or like prescribe it or whatever?
Yeah. So they own all that stuff already, guys. And they just merged with Kellenova. So what did they get from Kellenova? Let's talk about it. Pop-Tarts, Eggo waffles, Nutri-Grain bars, Special K cereal, RX bars, Morningstar Farms plant-based frozen meat alternatives, Pringles potato crisps, Cheez-It crackers, Club crackers, Townhouse crackers, Zesta saltines, Austin cracker sandwiches.
They own the whole aisle, bro. Like, dude, what the heck? That's insane.
They even own the crackers that are hanging out over by the fancy cheeses, you know, the table water crackers. Yeah, those the ones
that
are
just
just
the same since the 50s, like the packaging.
The ones that only come in the one sleeve per unit because they're that fancy.
And it's Kellogg's, so they now own all of those Kellogg's cereal brands that did not break off into a separate Kellogg's company that happened pretty recently. But remember we talked about how a lot of the cereals you can't, the American cereals, you can't buy in Europe and other places because of the ingredients?
Yes.
This company, Kellenova, owns the manufacturing of the like European versions of what Frosted Flakes would be, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, expand.
So these two things coming together, I feel so gross, so weird, so awful reading this. And I don't know that I can fully explain why, other than this feeling that when I walk into a store, I am tricked into believing these are all different choices that I get to make.
Absolutely.
With my money or, you know, with what I feed myself and my family. But really, it is just the same stuff.
It's the illusion of choice, right? Not for nothing was our first episode ever on Edward Bernays. And from the perspective of these entities, just like just like funeral monopolies, which is an example we keep going back to, we harp on this kind of stuff because food is a universal need, right? People love talking about any aspect of food. It's also a great business because demand for certain types of food may wax and wane and fluctuate, but demand for food in general is not going away anytime soon. And I was reading in this article you shared, Matt, just the stat that goes to inflation about how much, and we've talked about this at length, but whenever we mention something repeatedly, folks, it's because we feel is mission critical. Food prices across the world have skyrocketed no matter where you go, unless arguably if you go to some authoritarian places where they have better price controls, different bag of badgers, but food prices in the U.S. Alone, these journalists point out, increased by a quarter in just 4 years. And that is far outpacing the rate of inflation, far outpacing even freaking housing, man. So if you're an average person, you are laboring under the illusion of choice, right? You're not really getting to make choices. You're decision treed into giving them money somehow. And then perhaps more dangerously, especially combined with this targeting of personal info, you are going to be paying more. That is simply the truth. This is very good from the perspective of the businesses because now they have something they can take to the boardroom and say, hey guys, you liked messing with us last quarter? You know what I mean? It reminds me, I don't know, man, there's so much dirty stuff. Matt, I see what you're saying about feeling weird because who was it? There was a CEO, I think was it Starbucks who got fired for not busting unions?
Yeah, they
He
just
got
replaced
fired
him.
for not busting unions.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they brought in like the Chipotle CEO or something. I don't
Right.
know what the heck is going on there.
Who is notoriously, who is apparently, he has a name in the C-suite community for being kind of a bounty hunter.
Isn't he the guy who said that they definitely weren't making portions smaller, but then a study proved that they definitely were, and then he came out and said, "Sorry, we'll do better." He's at least the current Chipotle CEO. I can't remember.
It's kind of like, I mean, it's a mind game, right? It's kind of like one thing I ran into a few years ago. You know, if you're in a different country, sometimes they'll tell you get the tourist tax, right, or the foreigner price. Part of that's language barrier and not being from there and whatever. There was a Japanese official, and I'll find the source if anyone's interested, who said, "Oh no, we're not charging people more. We're not charging visitors more. We're charging locals less." Neat little mind game. But like maybe that's part of the ickiness you're feeling there, Matt, is all these factors.
I think so, but it does kind of go back to Bernays. It goes back to some of our studies on capitalism in general. I'm going to read from this article again, this Reuters article from August 14th. This is a quote. "The deal is a bet on consumers continuing to indulge in branded snacks and comes as packaged food companies face stalling growth after years of price hikes to cover skyrocketing inflation, which is a whole other thing. Because there's an investigation right now into food companies and how they've altered their prices to, quote, counteract inflation and to see how much of that is actually price gouging to make the consumers pay for it rather than, absorbing some of the costs of inflation like that. But it creeps me out because the current Mars CEO, Paul Weyrauch or Weyrauch, maybe? Weirauch. He says, quote, "We hope to be able to absorb more costs in our structure and help alleviate the issues we have in an inflationary environment."
Yeah. Oh, I got to have one thing, though. Yeah, I love this, but we need a positive lining because this is terrible news, Matt. Positive lining. Folks, if you are single and ready to mingle or find yourself already in a strange or bad romance, may we suggest your new pickup line for your partner. "Darling, please join me. Let us indulge in some branded snacks."
Oh,
yeah. Well, so are they basically saying that like the merger is necessary in order to keep them from continuously passing on that burden to customers? It sounds like bullshit to me. I mean, in terms of they're basically saying like we refuse to ever make less, so we have to grow because that's what stakeholders, in the market and all that expect. But isn't that kind of the argument they're making? They're like, no, you should be okay with it because it means savings for you.
kind of, but ultimately they're competing with what they call private label, like off-brand versions, the generics of your Townhouse, whatever, or Pop-Tarts.
Straight up bags of cereal at the bottom of the grocery aisle.
Clowny puffs, Yeah.
Because all of us consumers, we're feeling this inflation. We're the ones who are actually dealing with inflation, and we are having to just grapple with, I guess I can't buy that anymore. Right? Oh, I guess I can't afford that or indulge in that snack anymore when I go on that date to pick somebody.
To indulge in some branded snacks?
Yes. And this is what the article says. The U.S. packaged food sector as an entirety thing is seeing robust deal making as companies seek to scale to weather the impact of inflation-weary customers, cutting back and shifting their purchases to private label brands. So what they're betting is that if they have enough brands on the shelves, they are going to have enough overall sales so that their money keeps going up.
But isn't that what a monopoly is?
Yeah, that's what it feels like to me.
But not yet, because I would advance, there is a final step, and it's a step that they're going to have to reckon with at some point. What happens when there is no more Nestle? What happens to Coke when there is no more Pepsi? What happens when there's nothing left to buy, to merge and acquire, to murder and execute?
Then they
that's
win.
When the
world
rubber hits the
domination?
road. No, when the rubber hits the road. That's the thing that capitalism is scared of.
That's when the graph that's going up can no longer go up.
You got to have someone to fight against. It's perpetual war. It's basically, isn't that right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's scary. Oh, and you know what they're also scared of? People who make branded snacks. They're afraid of Wegovy and Ozempic. Apparently, investors at least are worried about that because this is what it says. Quote, investors are worried about a decline in sales from the greater adoption of drugs such as Ozempic and Wegovy for weight loss, which curb appetites and lead to feelings of fullness. The investors are afraid of you being full, so you won't shove cookies and candy in your face.
Now just buy the Kellenova branded Ozempic, get the money there. That's how it works. I feel like I'd be good at a boardroom. Evil.
We've seen. No, you've done it.
It works.
There's video. There's footage. But I mean,
great success.
Isn't the whole idea though of diversification is heading off stuff like that at the pass, where you got your health conscious brand. So no matter what side of the aisle, health wise, snacking wise, people fall, there's going to be something for them that you are selling them. But I guess the issue with Ozempic is that you're not selling them anything because they're not hungry anymore.
Yeah. Well, actually, several companies, I can't find it in here right now. Several companies, Nestle specifically, guys.
Right.
Nestle is developing brand new products specifically for people who use those drugs.
Right. Yeah. And the next step, I can't wait. Somebody really needs to do this. All right. You don't have to write to us. I know I keep interrupting here, but you don't have to write to us. But just so you know, if you happen to be a C-suite dude in the right industry or dudette, I feel dude is a gender neutral term now. But if you happen to be up there in the upper echelons of corporate America, put something that's a low, like slow burn, mild diuretic into some popular foods. And then before you do that, buy up, the right medicines and then brand them and make them sexy and tell no one except for the investors.
Hey, there you go. There you go, because that's all that matters. Last quote from the article before we end the segment, y'all. Mars said on Wednesday, that's Wednesday as we're recording this on October 14th, so today, it will pay $83.50 per share for Kellenova, representing about a 33% premium to its closing price on August 2nd. Isn't that nice, guys? The investors made big, and that's all that matters.
Mm-hmm.
Good on them.
And for anybody who's wondering if there's justice in this wide, dangerous world of ours, some of those guys probably subscribe to Disney Plus.
Uh-oh. Watch out. Arbitration is a-coming. Hey, we'll be right back with more strange news after a word from our sponsors.
And we're back. And before I get into the main story that I brought for today's strange news, I just wanted to mention a couple of shorties. One that hit close to home for me, being a person who snores, and really gave me pause in terms of what might become of me at the hands of my partner.
I have to recuse myself for this one, guys, because the misophonia that I suffer from, I don't think anybody should kill anybody, just to be clear. But I cannot handle snoring or mouth noises.
I'm glad we haven't ever had to share a hotel room.
There was a road trip. There was a road trip that got close.
Okay, fair enough. Close to you stabbing me to death in my sleep?
Recusing myself, my friend.
Okay, fair enough. There's a little bit of confusion here in this story, guys. I'm going to read you the headline. I think you get the gist thus far. Philadelphia man pleads guilty to stabbing neighbor to death over snoring. In my mind, I picture it's the person who's upset by the snoring, stabbing the snorer to death as a result of said, inconvenience. Apparently, Quite the opposite. Christopher Casey, 56 years old, was recently handed a relatively short prison sentence after pleading guilty to involuntary manslaughter when his neighbor, Robert Wallace, 62, busted through his window to potentially do him harm. I guess that's the only way you get involuntary manslaughter out of this, right? But it led to an altercation that involved Casey stabbing Wallace to death. He also pleaded guilty to possessing an instrument of crime, being a knife.
Which is like the non-branded snack of a Bowie knife, right?
But the interesting thing is, apparently, Wallace had They've been dealing with this for so long that he was over it. And he said, look, I'll help you get a surgery to, take care of this problem. I'll help you pay for it. It would benefit us both. But Casey did not believe him and declined.
I think there's a past here too. Usually in these kind of situations, they don't come out of the
Well, that's why I mentioned
sky.
these kind of simmering resentments usually don't happen overnight.
Now, guys, imagine your neighbor busts down your window and says, "Hey, I will pay for surgery to get you fixed."
Now, one would assume that conversation took place perhaps a little more civilly at another time, and this was the result of him having declined the offer.
Maybe.
It was probably, I'll tell you, if we're guessing here, and we'd have to go to the full Philadelphia Inquirer article, but what it sounds like, again, simmering tensions, and it might be because they share a wall in a duplex, it might be a thing where Wallace is there at 3 a.m. or something, or let's say 5:09 a.m. and is just bang, 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 cop knocking on his neighbor's door and says, dude, I will help you, but maybe in like a really rude, confrontational or aggro way, an offensive way. So like to your point, Noel, it doesn't, I don't know if it was the gentleman with cravats in the drawing room, so like
Hashing it out.
decanting brandy and saying,
I would think perhaps
the respiratory system.
Indeed, it is a sticky wicket, that respiratory system, a complex network of tubes, indeed, both literally and I guess metaphorically. This sounds pretty rife. I'd like to move on from this one if you guys are okay. Unless Matt, you had anything else you wanted to add about this?
Well, I would just say his neighbor broke in because he was snoring, and he ended up in an act of involuntary manslaughter, killed his neighbor that broke into his house, and he got 11 and a half months. No, between 11 and a half to 23 months in prison for doing that, and 3 years of probation.
Not for nothing, but it's not what you get for cold-blooded murder, most foul. I mean,
Right. And it wasn't, again, this is not a brandy and decanters and cravats situation. There weren't pistols at dawn. There is a cold ending, though, where Casey does apologize to the family, and he uses a word I don't like, where he says, "This is unfortunate." That's not what you say when you kill someone, even
it's a bit of a non-apology.
It also notes that his attorney told the newspaper that they were speaking with there in Philadelphia that, quote, "Casey's autism makes it difficult to navigate confrontation. He was terrified of this guy, and he believed he had no option." So I'm thinking that might be his choice of language. If a dude breaks
through your window, isn't that tech? I mean, there are certain states that would stand your ground would come into play there. So
that attorney is James Lyons. Yeah.
Gosh, a lot more at play in that one than I even realized. More complex story than I would have thought upon reading the headline. So thank you guys for adding some additional context and detail to that one. The second one, the really short, I just want to keep this one as short as possible because I'm pretty excited about this bigger one. NASA is apparently using glitter on Mars, more or less glitter bombing Mars to potentially make it more habitable for humans. We obviously here at Stuff They Don't Want You to Know have a fascination for glitter. Where does it come from? Who's buying it? What are the military uses for it? I mean, glitter is sort of a pop cultural term, I guess. This is really more of a heat trapping particulate. I guess it's aluminum based sort of like dust that, if shot into the atmosphere of Mars, could potentially soak up some of the heat over time and make Mars more habitable.
This is a true story, fellow conspiracy realist. And maybe it's the sleep deprivation, but I'm chuckling, building out this increasingly elaborate scenario in my head. Come, darling, indulge in some branded snacks and let us explore our fascination of Martian glitter.
I love it.
Yeah, well, and it is essentially, I guess, forced global warming, right? I mean, it's a form of that. It's climate control, and the idea is, I'll just read from that. There was this is coming as a result of a paper that was released from the University of Chicago, a planetary scientist by the name of Edward Kite, helped lead this study that was published in the Journal of Science Advances. He talks about how there's, obviously interest in terraforming Mars, the idea of making it similar to Earth in terms of habitability. And for Mars, he says, warming the planet is a necessary but insufficient first step. Previous concepts have focused on releasing greenhouse gases, but these require large amounts of resources that are scarce on Mars. The key elements of our paper are a novel proposal to use engineered nanoparticles to warm Mars's atmosphere and climate modeling that suggests this approach could be much more efficient than previous concepts. So, glitter bomb Mars, I guess. Why not?
I can already see it. They're just going to cause accidental runaway global warming on Mars before we even get there.
Yeah, why not? Let's just head it off at the pass, guys. We're going to do it anyway. Let's just nip it in the bud and get it done quick.
Again, sounding like an old curmudgeon. I'm building 2 long-form improv scenes. Sound like an old curmudgeon. We have Earth at home. You know what I mean? Maybe fix that. We've also got out-of-control glitter on Earth. Maybe fix that. But Noel, I'm glad you brought this up because the idea of terraforming or modifying the Martian climate is the long-term goal, because otherwise, I don't know, man. Mars is so appealing, but there are so many problems with living there long-term, even if you have a subterranean metropolis. So maybe this will be an answer, but right now it seems like a broad theoretical brush, does it not?
Oh, it's absolutely in the realm of conceptualization at this point. How it would actually be rolled out. I have not read the full paper. Maybe they get right into it, A through Z. But it's not very clear from what I'm reading here. In Fast Company, by the way, this article, if you want to read a little bit more about this, actually, it's published in Fast Company, but it's written by Reuters staff, so maybe those companies are
Fast Company.
And
a little too fast, guys. A little too fast.
Too fast for class. My final and I think a little juicier. Those are both pretty juicy, but this one this tickled my brain in particular. I know you guys are familiar with the street artist Banksy. A lot has been made of who this individual is. There is a really cool documentary, if you're not familiar, called Exit Through the Gift Shop, that in and of itself is a sort of work of art. It's got this kind of unreliable narrator thing where Banksy basically creates this street artist star, Mr. Brainwash or whatever, out of nowhere, and it's called into question as to whether that's real or not, whether he actually did that or whether the guy was in on the game. Banksy is very much almost like a Andy Kaufman type figure, but instead of comedy, he does it with street art, and his works have garnered massive global attention. He's English, we know that much, and to the point where these unauthorized, most of the time, works of art are worth a lot of money and actually cause properties that they're done on to appreciate in value or become tourist destinations or whatever. And anytime a Banksy pops up on something that's not nailed down, or even if it is nailed down, half the time there's always concern that it's going to be stolen. He's done all kinds of cool things. There was this piece of his that was auctioned off at Christie's, I want to say, or one of the big auction houses, and he or whomever they multiple individuals, some people think Banksy is a collective, posted a video from inside the auction where the moment the thing was auctioned for over £1 million, he triggered a button that caused the special made frame around the piece to shred the work of art in front of, all the onlookers. And crazily enough, the fact that he actually interacted with that piece made it more valuable after it was already sold for a certain price. So this really does call into question, or bring up an interesting point, I guess, about the nature of art and value and intellectual property. And another irony is really showing itself in this story. Banksy has recently unveiled 9 animal-themed pieces in and around London. His organization that represents him, which I believe is called Pest Control, have said that the works don't mean anything, but his works are almost always politically motivated. He has a lot of stuff about refugees and various conflicts around the globe. I just think it's really interesting that his representation says these don't mean anything, because to me, they're very much in line with this notion of the animal kingdom coming for us. We've done all these stories about orcas attacking boats, and a lot has been made of this idea of like animals have had enough and they're like revolting against humans. Because one of these is near the London Zoo, and it's like painted on a roll-up kind of security gate, and it's a gorilla lifting the gate up as if it were made of cloth. And then there are birds and a seal, and in the background you see other glittering eyes escaping, from the zoo. The one that pertains to this story in particular is a rhinoceros painted on the side of a building that appears to be mounting, let's just say, or family show, a broken down car that has a safety cone on its bonnet, they would call it in the UK, its hood, making it kind of look like a weird anthropomorphic animal car. So this idea that like animal kingdom is coming back to F technology and like we can't do anything about it. But yeah, his people say that they don't mean anything. But I guess part of the cool thing about art is you can take whatever meaning you wish, whatever the artist's statement or representatives might say. The thing that brings this story up today is that particular piece was vandalized by somebody wearing, what are those little hats called, Ben, with the eyes and the mouth in them, the little ski masks?
Balaclavas?
That's it. Yeah. Someone wearing a balaclava.
Stuff they don't want you to know, brought to you by Balaclava, the number one least shady thing to wear to your favorite financial institution.
Yeah. Or just, the store. But, onlookers, because they, I don't know, these pieces get announced, and then the moment they're announced, like on the official Banksy Instagram or whatever, through other channels, immediately people are trying to find them. There's a lot of attention being paid. So people were looking on while this person did this and saying, hey, knock it off. Don't do that. So the Guardian reports in a piece by their staff, Banksy rhino artwork in London defaced with graffiti tag. One of the 9 murals, animal-themed murals put up by Banksy in London in as many days has been defaced. And actually, the gorilla one that I mentioned was put up after this one and after this event. Reading from The Guardian, an image of a rhino appearing to mount a clapped-out silver Nissan Micra with a traffic cone on its bonnet appeared in southeast London on Monday and was confirmed as a Banksy on the artist's Instagram account. By Tuesday morning, after the vandalization, the car had also been removed. A spokesperson for the Royal Borough of Greenwich, the local authority where the rhino mural was located, said, it's a real shame that a mindless vandal has defaced the mural, which has already drawn visitors and brought so much joy to many. Okay. I like Banksy a lot. I really liked Exiting the Gift Shop. I think what he does is really interesting.
I'm hearing a butt.
It is and it isn't. I just think it's so fascinating. None of these are like sanctioned by said organization, Royal Borough of Greenwich. He doesn't ask permission. They don't ask permission to do these on these buildings that are presumably owned by people. And yet, because of the nature of this, the absolute craze around Banksy and his work, it's like he gets a pass. And the article is like, it's like vandal defaces vandalism. You know what I mean? Because one person's vandalism is another person's art. And we know taggers and stuff, they get arrested all the time. And it's just very interesting to me, the kind of double standard here. And I'm not trying to be a poo-pooer of this type of culture jamming art. It's really, really interesting, but it did cause me to kind of think about the irony of this. And I found a really cool piece on like a marketing brand, like a marketing consultancy website of the UK, Harper McLeod, Banksy's complicated relationship with intellectual property. And it points out, the writer Sam Dillon, I'm just going to read from it because I think it's really smart. The topic of Banksy's anonymity has once again been in the news recently due to the decision of U.S. fashion giant Guess to use several of the artist's works in the online and in-store promotion of a new line of clothing, including his famous flower thrower stencil. This is the one where it looks like someone's throwing a Molotov cocktail, but it's like a bouquet of flowers. Super iconic stuff. This induced the artist himself to take to Instagram to encourage his almost 12 million strong followers to engage in retaliatory shoplifting at Guess's Regent Street branch in London. He alleged that Guess has seen it fit to, quote, help themselves to the use of his artwork for the purposes of their brandalized collaboration without obtaining prior permission to do so. What do you guys think? I think it's such an interesting double standard. And like, he kind of wants to have it, whatever, want to have it both ways.
Hypocrites in the art community say it ain't so. Also, bonus points for Brandalize. That's my new favorite.
It's funny, but almost kind of cringe. Is it not a little cringe?
My favorite new portmanteau.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I'll just go on a little bit more. It says Banksy's aforementioned aversion to intellectual property rights, which he has made very, very clear. Like, he openly asked people to copy his style, to reproduce it, whatever. But it's almost this unspoken caveat of like, as long as you're not making money off of it. Has also been a contributory factor to his difficulties in obtaining trademark protection over his work. Over the past few years, several of his trademark registrations, filed in the name of Pest Control Office Limited, have been subjected to successful cancellation actions on the basis of bad faith at the EUIPO, which is the European Union Intellectual Property Office. The article goes on, somewhat surprisingly, these rulings have repeatedly made direct reference to Banksy's opinions on IP, referencing both his decision to be, quote, very vocal regarding his disdain for intellectual property rights and a comment that copyright is for losers from his 2006 book, Wall and Peace. While such statements were confirmed not to preclude an artist from accruing such rights, the EUIPO's reasoning centered on its findings that Banksy possessed no genuine intention to use the artworks as trademarks in relation to the goods and services listed. So a lot to unpack here. I don't want to make this an overly long segment, but I did think it was an interesting... I immediately was like, huh? Like, somebody tagged what's essentially a really, really expensive and sought after tag. Like, one of the other pieces, a wolf on a satellite dish, was immediately stolen. And that's kind of, but then what happens if you steal something like that and then try to sell it? Like, there's no artist to come after you because they're anonymous. So it's like, it's not like stealing a painting from a museum, but it's worth as much money. These pieces go for millions of pounds, millions of dollars. You
put it in your $5 million London flat. And then when your fancy friends come over, you say, that's a Banksy.
That's a Banksy. Yeah.
I'm not as elitist as people may lead you to believe, darling. Observe my Banksy, stolen here from the streets of London.
Yeah. And then Banksy shows up to the party one day and then
Yeah.
Like, someone burned the Banksy, and then there's a whole movie made about it.
That's why Exit through the Gift Shop is such a neat film, because it's kind of like a work of art in itself. It's sort of like an anti-documentary, and I'm a big fan of sampling and other kinds of culture jamming. Like, Everything is Terrible. These folks who take weird Christian VHS tapes that are technically copywritten, but use them to create mashups and all kinds of weird internet art. And I think that stuff is fascinating in bands like Negativland that take copyrighted material and smash them up into weird audio collages. So I'm all about this stuff, but I do think when you start making copyright claims for your illegal art, it does sort of put a little bit of a damper on your philosophy as a culture jamming, kind of iconoclast or whatever. And maybe let us know what you think. Am I being too hard on Banksy? I'm not trying to be, because I really do think this stuff is cool, but I think it's very sticky in terms of the legalities of it and wanting to have it both ways. That's it.
Agreed. And that's a great question here, folks. To you, we pass the torch, right? Because this is, Noel, I would argue this is a inherently philosophical question, right? It goes beyond maybe the idea of double standards into what is art, what is ownership. We also want to know, your favorite Mars bar. We want to know, we want to know what you think the end result of all these monopolies will be. And can any of us really understand what $36 billion is? I'm not sure my head groks it.
Imagine all the Cheez-Its in the world.
Yeah. There we go. There's also, check out Cheese Conspiracy, and tell us how long you think it would take to count to 1 billion. We do have the answer. We'll give it to you later in our weekly listener mail segment. In the meantime, go forth, folks, prosper, have adventures. Most importantly, let us know what you think. We try to be easy to find online.
That's right. You can find us at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on Facebook, where we have our Facebook group, Here's Where It Gets Crazy, on X, FKA Twitter, and on YouTube, where we have video content galore. We are Conspiracy Stuff Show, however, on Instagram and TikTok.
You can call us directly. Our number is 1-833-STDWYTK. When you choose to make that phone call, you're going to get 3 minutes. Give yourself a cool nickname. That's mandatory. Then let us know if we can use your name and message on the air. The rest is yours. Have fun with it. Make your own verbal Banksy on our voicemail machine. If you've got more to send, then you can fit in that 3-minute message. Why not instead send us a good old-fashioned email? We are
the entities that read every piece of correspondence we receive. Be well aware, yet unafraid, sometimes the void writes back, and perhaps, Matt, you saw me typing during part of this evening's program. We would like you to write us a little bit of art, a poem, should you feel so inspired. Here is one example. Come, my little darling skittle bag, let our inflation be not fake. Taste this evening rainbow with me. Join me in this adjacent duplex. Snore to me of branded snacks and monopolies. Spread your glitter to the stars. May all your objections be dismissed, for you agreed to these conditions in advance. A love letter from Disney to Mars.
That was
Literal
beautiful.
poetry. Wow.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Conspiracy at iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.